For more than 30 years, special effects expert Ray Harryhausen has been entertaining the imaginations of movie audiences the world over. He is renowned for many important advances in the field of special visual effects and for his mastery of the art of stop-motion animation. Truly one of a kind, Ray Harryhausen is a major creative force behind some of the screen's best-loved fantasy films. Are about to see an in-depth look at the career, films, and early experiments of movie magician Ray Harryhausen. We'll start by going back some 50 years to the day Fred and Martha Harryhausen's teenage son felt he had become destined to spend his life working in a world of fantasy and monsters.
Yes, it all started in 1933 when I went to see a film called King Kong. I knew it was a gorilla picture, but I didn't know anything else about it. And, of course, when I got to the foyer of Grauman's Chinese, they had this enormous display of the bust of King Kong. And that was startling in itself. Inside, we were treated to a prologue, a jungle prologue, which was great showmanship. It tied the whole thing together. And, of course, then the picture started with Max Steiner's wonderful, famous theme, and I haven't been the same since.
Young Harryhausen was mesmerized by that giant gorilla and decided to make it his duty to find out how Kong was made. Back then, there were no film schools or books that covered special effects, so Ray had to piece little bits of information together and began experimenting in a workshop his parents set up for him in their garage.
This is the 55th year of my collecting imaginative memorabilia. Here in my arms is a real treasure. I believe this is the second animated model that Ray Harryhausen ever created. The first, together with this, was made out of a fur coat that he commandeered from his mother. And up here on the wall, a brontosaurus, believe it or not, that he created at the age of 13. And if you can believe it, the skin is made out of silk stockings.
The very first bit of filming I did was with the cave bear. I borrowed a camera from a friend of mine, and it didn't have a proper one-frame mechanism on it. So I had to hit the camera's start button, hoping I would get one frame. Sometimes I got two, sometimes I would get three. So it was a very hit and miss proposition. When the film came back, I remember the thrill of seeing this cave bear that was just a piece of wood and covered with cloth move around by itself, and that was most hypnotic, and that kept me going for a good many years, just making experiments.
During the next few years, Harryhausen developed his drawing skills and continued his experiments with model animation. His flair for fantasy became evident. When he felt confident that he was on the right track, he decided to try and make contact with the man who designed the special effects used in King Kong. The man who pioneered the use of model animation in fantasy films, Willis O'Brien.
Obie told him to bring his work and come up to our house sometime soon, which he did, and brought his mother and dad and his portable screen, and ran a bit of the film and brought his little dinosaur with him. And he was real young and sparkly-eyed and a nice boy. And, of course, I praised him to the skies. I thought his work was wonderful. And I said, well, did you do that all yourself? And he said, yes, I did. And, of course, I just patted him on the back and praised him, and after they left, Obie looked at me sort of strangely, and he said, you realize you're encouraging my competition, don't you? And I said, well, I didn't think of that.
Willis O'Brien made Harryhausen his first assistant on the special effects crew of his new picture, Mighty Joe Young. Working on Mighty Joe Young and so closely with Willis O'Brien was a wonderful and invaluable experience for Harryhausen. The film won the 1949 Academy Award for special effects, but surprisingly, it failed at the box office. No new projects came along for O'Brien, and Harryhausen ended up back on his own, making 2 more fairy tale films. Harryhausen had developed a reputation for being able to work fast and alone, and was soon hired by a producer who wanted to try and make a film using animation called The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. The challenge was that it had to be made for very little money. Harryhausen devised a technique using a process called split screen. Now, this enabled him to insert the animation model within the already shot live-action footage, instead of using the time-consuming and costly miniatures and glass paintings used so beautifully in the films of Willis O'Brien. Another distinction of The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms is that the film was based on a short story by a young author named Ray Bradbury. Years earlier, when they were both teenagers, Bradbury and Harryhausen had become friends while attending meetings of a science fiction club. Now, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms was an important step in both their careers.
Not only did it change your life because it gave you a chance to do some animation more on your own, away from other people, but it changed my life because that story was read by John Huston, and I got the job of writing Moby Dick for the screen because of the Melvillian overtones in the story, even though I'd never read Melville, but evidently there's a ghost of Melville in there somewhere.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
I remember the picture was made for very little money. It's laughable when you think that the whole picture was made for $200,000, which hardly pays for a costume by today's standard. In the 50s, we were expected to put on the screen very imaginative ideas for little or no money. And that became a challenge. I'm always grateful that I went through that process because it taught me to think in terms of conservation rather than just spending lavishly for the sake of spending lavishly. And it's carried over into most of my later films.
The success of The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms encouraged Harryhausen to develop a couple of ideas for new films. One was called The Elementals. Harryhausen made a presentation in drawings and even produced a test reel to show what he had in mind. This particular shot features Harryhausen himself fending off one of his animated bat creatures. His idea was purchased but never went into production. After completing one more of his fairy tale films, Ray was asked to meet with a young producer at Columbia Studios who wanted to make a film about a giant octopus that tears down the Golden Gate Bridge. This was Harryhausen's first meeting with Charles H. Schneer, and from it, a partnership developed into one of the most important teams in fantasy filmmaking history. Their first production, It Came From Beneath the Sea, had to be produced on a very small budget. They had to resort to using stock footage for some scenes and stock music for the score.
Giant octopus, as you know, is supposed to have 8 tentacles. But I felt very strongly that if I could cut it down to 6 tentacles, we could save quite a bit of money and time in animation. So I actually made a 6-tentacle octopus and kept the non-existing tentacles underwater so that no one would start counting them.
"20 Million Miles to Earth" was the third and final of what can be considered the early black and white films from the Schneer and Harryhausen team. It was an important step for Harryhausen because the script was based on his story idea, and his drawings served as blueprints for the major scenes. The film tells of a returning spaceship from Venus that crashes, releasing a specimen of a strange alien life form.
Of a human being.
Harryhausen chose Rome as the setting for his story. After all, he had already destroyed New York, Washington, and San Francisco. There was no money in the budget for expensive location work, so Schneer and Harryhausen took a camera crew to Italy and shot all the backgrounds they needed. When they returned to Hollywood, the director and the cast were hired, and production officially began.
Well, if people had listened to us earlier, they could have been richer sooner. Because look at the record in films the last 3 or 4 years. All of the biggest box office films in the whole history of the world now have all been science fiction, fantasy films.
It was very difficult, I remember, at that time to even put fantasy on the screen. People didn't seem to want it. I had an awful time trying to sell Sinbad, The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. It became an ordeal to take it around to various studios and keep getting rejected.
Luckily, Charles Schneer saw the 8 drawings that Harryhausen had done for his Sinbad presentation and was able to convince the studio that they could deliver a film like nothing ever seen before. The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad was a breakthrough fantasy film in many ways. It was the first time model animation was taken into the realm of total fantasy, and Harryhausen accepted the challenge of filming it in color. Harryhausen coined the name Dynamation for his special processes that enabled actors and the creatures of mythology to interact on screen as never before.
This type of picture presents a big challenge to actors because they have to do what we call shadow boxing to a great degree. When they perform on the set, the character that they're performing with many times is not there, and they have to imagine it to be there. And found out in the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad that Kerwin Matthews was very talented at giving the impression that he was actually seeing something.
I found myself on a plane, landed in Paris on Easter Sunday, changed planes, got on another plane, went to Granada, Spain, arrived in the middle of the night and stepped out of the plane and was driven in a horse and carriage to the Granada Palace. And I was introduced to Ray Harryhausen and put into a costume with jewels and a turban on my head. And I said, well, what are we going to shoot? And he said, well, down here on the pillow is this little girl. And I spent the rest of my film, or that film, looking for little Kathy Crosby or great big monsters. I suppose my own sort of naive ingenuousness helped the films in a way because I tried to believe that I was actually looking at these creatures, and I had an idea what they looked like because Ray had done drawings. I never did see any of the actual little figures that he used, but he had beautiful drawings of them. When I finally got to see the film, it was in the theater in Monte Carlo, and I couldn't believe that it was the same film I'd worked on. Not at all. When all those monsters came to life and the Cyclops and all the special effects, I was as carried away as if I weren't in it.
The film's wonderful fairy tale quality and Harryhausen's fanciful creatures made The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad 1958 sleeper hit of the year. It established Harryhausen as an important innovator in the field of special effects, and Schneer and Harryhausen as a successful team of fantasy filmmakers.
I think if there's any service we can do for the community of people in the world, Ray and I are examples of people who fell in love and stayed in love with ideas, with dinosaurs, with rocket ships, with anything fantastic. We learned early on that everyone else was wrong and we were right. That's a valuable lesson to learn. And if you learn it young enough and you let other people wander off into reality somewhere and kill their dreams, but you hold on to the thing that you love with all your heart and soul, because you know, starting at a very early age, this is the thing that's going to save your life. This is the thing that's going to make your life. And if you just hold to that thing...
In a sense, that means you have to be a fanatic, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
because I think that's all the difference between the people who do and do not do is this stick-to-itiveness quality, this quality of curiosity. I've always had an intense curiosity, and I know you have. You've explored so many different avenues to write your books. And curiosity today, for some reason, seems to be forgotten. And I think that's so important that you start with curiosity, and then you have to have imagination to know what to do with curiosity. And after you have curiosity and imagination, you've got to be able to put it over by discipline.
Absolutely.
After the success of Sinbad, Schneer and Harryhausen chose to film an adaptation of the writings of Jonathan Swift in their production of The Three Worlds of Gulliver. Kerwin Matthews was again the star.
Even though the film Three Worlds of Gulliver didn't have as many animals or monsters, I think it was a great compliment to Ray, because the same techniques were used when Gulliver was huge and all the Lilliputians were tiny, and in reverse with the Brobdingnagians. That's when his technical expertise really was used, and I can remember him literally sitting with a slide rule and a computer trying to figure out how to shoot a scene with a specific lens and so forth and so on. One of the nicest things about Gulliver was the fact that I often had the chance to work in some beautiful miniature sets, and also the glorious day I had of hauling boats around that Ray had designed in minute detail.
The end of our day.
I suppose my memories of all the years of a film career, a good many of them are centered around Ray, simply because I did films that are so memorable with him, and with a man that had a great deal of influence on my life, because he was such a gentleman under such pressure and so creative.
I prefer to go back in the past, of course, because I find it more romantic. Many of the space vehicles, particularly you see today, are so cold-blooded. They leave you feeling that the future doesn't have much warmth to it. You know what's in the past, and I've always found it much more romantic to delve into the origins, like Greek mythology, origins of our literature, origins of our whole society, which dates back to the Greeks and the ancient peoples.
In Jason and the Argonauts, Harryhausen also unleashed the fury of the Harpies in this epic retelling of the quest for the Golden Fleece. But it is in the final sequence, in which 7 skeletons rise from the ground to do battle with Jason and his men, that has to be the most intricate animation scene ever undertaken by an individual. took Harryhausen 4.5 months in the animation studio to complete that sequence. When all 7 multi-jointed skeletons were in a scene, there were so many precise moves to be made that at times Harryhausen was able to complete as few as 13 frames of film a day. For his next film, Harryhausen went into space. But in keeping with his belief that the past is more romantic, it was Victorian Englishmen that became astronauts in H.G. Wells' First Men in the Moon. It is hard to believe now in this age of fantasy film fanaticism that First Men in the Moon, with all its spectacular imagery, was a box office failure. But by the time the film was released in the mid-60s, fantasy audiences had drifted away, and Schneer and Harryhausen's momentum had come to a halt.
It's not an audience, you're on trial! No, Bedford, no! No! Just fix it!
For his next 2 films, Harryhausen found himself back with his old friend, the dinosaur. First was the Hammer Films production of 1 Million BC. The film interested Harryhausen because it was a remake of the 1940 film 1 Million Years BC. In that earlier film, the prehistoric monsters were created by using live lizards and a man in a dinosaur suit. Harryhausen felt the new film would give him a chance to clearly show the advantages of model animation. For the next film, Schneer and Harryhausen were able to re-team and revive an old project of Willis O'Brien's titled The Valley of Gwangi. The cowboys in the film had to defend themselves against some of Harryhausen's most ferocious and dynamic animated creations. But in 1969, a straightforward, non-exploitive fantasy film seemed to be a white elephant to the new management at the studio, and Gwangi was considered a flop, even before it was given its unpublicized release. It seemed that Harryhausen's style of filmmaking was on the verge of extinction, and Harryhausen feared that the world had become such a pessimistic place that there was no room left for innocent fantasy. It really wasn't too long before Charles Schneer was able to find backing for a new film, patterned after Schneer and Harryhausen's greatest box office success. And The Golden Voyage of Sinbad went into production. Harryhausen incorporated his interest of East Indian mythology into this lush fantasy film. And more than ever before, his drawings influenced the whole production design. The Golden Voyage of Sinbad became an instant box office hit and proved that a well-made fantasy film could again find an audience. This film can be considered the beginning of a new cycle that currently has led fantasy films into becoming the most successful movies of all time. The sequence with the statue of Kali was certainly one of the reasons for the film's popularity.
I think Ray has survived because he has the ability to imagine things to begin with. He has a story mind, generally speaking. He's always been looking for a way of accumulating detail, imaginative detail in his films. So I think he supersedes the younger people who come along after him by making these big leaps from film to film. You can trace his progression of ideas, his imagination, over a period of 30 years.
brings us up to Schneer and Harryhausen's most recent and biggest production, MGM's Clash of the Titans. The film's all-star cast of Olympian gods and beautiful locations, shot in 4 different countries, provided a magnificent setting for Harryhausen to work his wonders.
Ray Harryhausen's art in the cinema is a true and distinctive art form, one that he has practiced himself for over 35 years. It was only on Clash of the Titans that I prevailed upon him that both he and I had only so many haircuts left. And that being the case, he'd better get some help in to assist him. We were very fortunate to have the assistance of Jim Danforth, a superb animator, and a young man from England who joined us as an apprentice, who worked along with Ray and who is hopefully going to take on, as his career, the stop-motion animation technique and his camera work.
In the extensive animation scenes, Harryhausen's special attention to lighting effects is particularly effective, especially in the sequence that has been heralded as a classic Harryhausen scene, the encounter of Perseus with the Medusa. Harryhausen developed his own original concept of the character in drawings. A sculpture was made, and from that a mold, in which the animation model was formed around a metal skeleton of over 100 joints. After adding the final touches, Harryhausen took the model into his animation studio, and with his artistry and imagination, brought the Medusa to life.
think there'll always be room for a good fantasy film. I think fantasy is something people need. There's a need to escape from the mundane world. There's a need to stretch your imagination. And I think that's what fantasy does. Fantasy stretches your imagination, can deliver you into a bizarre world. It can give you an hour and a half to 2 hours in a completely different atmosphere, a different society. And it's something that will be a staple, I think, in filmmaking in all the years to come.
I think that what Harryhausen finally does for most of us, for the average viewer, the average person in the world, is he reminds us that all of us as individuals have potential. And when he goes around the world and is celebrated at screenings and there are ovations for him when he comes on stage, we're celebrating ourselves. We're respecting a person who started in a garage 43, 44 years ago, and by being lonely and special and working with his monsters has become a special part of our life. So really, he represents a heck of a lot of our own dreams that we've never got out of our heads, and he pries into our skulls and gets those images in his head and then forces them out through his fingers into his animals, and the animals move and our dreams move.